This story is titled, Mom Always Favored My Brother, but Stealing My Inheritance for Him Was the Last Straw. Guys, before we start the video, I just saw something crazy. 82% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. If you're already here enjoying the content, why not hit that subscribe button? It's completely free, takes just a second, and it really helps the channel grow so I can keep bringing you more stories you love. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, growing up, it was impossible not to notice that Michael was Mom's favorite. He was 4 years older than me, and in her eyes could do no wrong. If he got into trouble, she'd twist the situation until somehow I was to blame. Looking back, I guess it started when I was really little, maybe around 6. There was this day at the park when Michael decided he wanted to use the swing I was on. I told him to wait his turn, but instead of waiting, he shoved me off. I landed wrong and broke my arm. I cried so hard that day, not just because of the pain, but because of how Mom reacted. Instead of scolding Michael, she scolded me. She said I should have just let him use the swing because he was older and didn't know better. I remember sitting there, holding my arm, thinking, why am I the one in trouble? That kind of summed up my childhood. It didn't stop there. Michael had a habit of going through my stuff. He'd take money from my piggy bank whenever he felt like it, and when I complained, Mom would brush it off. She'd say, he needs it more than you do. You're too young to understand. I'd save up for weeks, sometimes months, for little things I wanted. A new toy, art supplies, stuff like that. And Michael would just take the money without a second thought. Once, he spent it on candy. And another time, he used it to buy a cheap video game from one of his friends. Mom's solution? She didn't make him give it back or even apologize. Instead, she bought him a new game to cheer him up because he was feeling bad about being yelled at by Dad. Dad was the only one who ever tried to hold Michael accountable, but his efforts never lasted long. Mom would always step in, saying Michael was just misunderstood or going through a phase. I think that's why Dad was always so protective of me when he was around. He could see how unfairly I was being treated, but everything changed when Dad died. I was 12, and Michael was 16. He passed away in a car accident on his way home from work. It was a rainy day, and the roads were slippery. I don't remember much from that night except the sound of Mom crying in the kitchen when the police came to tell us. At first, it felt like our whole world had shattered. But while I was grieving the loss of my dad, Michael seemed to become Mom's entire world. The first few weeks after Dad's death were a blur. I tried to keep up with school, but it was hard. I'd come home and find Mom sitting on the couch, holding one of Dad's shirts, crying. At first, I thought maybe we'd bond over our shared grief, but every time I tried to talk to her about how I was feeling, she'd change the subject to Michael. Michael's having such a hard time, she'd say. You need to be strong for your brother. That became her mantra. Be strong for Michael. It didn't matter that I was just a kid too. I was expected to pick up the slack. Suddenly, I was responsible for cooking dinner, cleaning the house, and making sure Michael had everything he needed. Mom would spend hours talking to him, comforting him, while I sat in the background, trying to figure out where I fit into this new version of our family. One night, I overheard her talking to a friend on the phone. She said, Michael's the one who really needs me right now. He's so sensitive and he's taking this so hard. My name is different. She's stronger. I don't think she realized how much that hurt me. I wasn't strong. I was a scared, grieving kid who had just lost her dad. But in Mom's eyes, my feelings didn't matter as much as Michael's. As the years went on, the favoritism only got worse. Michael started acting out not long after Dad died. He'd talk back to teachers, skip school, and get into fights. One time, he was caught selling cigarettes to younger students. Instead of punishing him, Mom made excuses. She said he was acting out because of his grief and that the school didn't understand him. When they threatened to suspend him, Mom pulled him out and enrolled him in a different school, claiming the first one wasn't challenging enough for him. It was ridiculous. Meanwhile, I threw myself into school. I joined clubs, worked hard to get good grades, and even started working a part-time job when I was 15 to save up for college. But no matter what I did, it was never enough to get Mom's attention. She missed my honor roll ceremony because Michael had detention that day. She missed my first debate competition because Michael needed help with his homework. The pattern was clear. Michael always came first. I didn't just resent Michael, I resented Mom too. It wasn't his fault that she spoiled him, but he knew how to take advantage of it. He'd get away with anything, and he knew I couldn't. One time, I worked for weeks on a science project, and Michael destroyed it the night before it was due because he didn't win a school contest. I was furious. But when I told Mom, she made me apologize to him. She said I should have been more understanding because Michael was upset. Then she took him to the mall and bought him a new video game to make him feel better. By the time I was in high school, I stopped expecting anything from Mom. I knew she wasn't going to show up to my events or celebrate my achievements. I focused on myself and started to dream about getting out of that house. I wanted to go to college, get a good job, and build a life that didn't revolve around Michael's drama. But even as I planned my escape, I couldn't help but feel the weight of Mom's neglect. Every time she chose Michael over me, it chipped away at my sense of self-worth. I started to wonder if maybe I really was as unimportant as she made me feel. Looking back now, I realize how much that dynamic shaped me. It's no wonder I grew up feeling like I had to prove myself constantly, even when there was no one around to notice. By the time Michael turned 17, things started to go from bad to worse. His phases were no longer just small acts of rebellion. They were full-on destructive patterns. He started drinking, skipping school more often, and picking fights with anyone who crossed him. But instead of holding him accountable, Mom doubled down on her excuses for him. She'd say, "He's just acting out because of your dad," or "You don't understand what he's going through." It was hard to watch. Every time Michael messed up, Mom was right there to clean up the mess. If he got into a fight at school, she'd march down to the principal's office to defend him. If a teacher called about his behavior, she'd accuse them of being unfair. It didn't matter how bad it got, she always found a way to blame someone else. Meanwhile, I stayed invisible, trying to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. When Michael crashed Mom's car while drunk, I thought for sure she'd finally draw the line. He'd been out with his friends, drinking all night, and somehow convinced one of them to let him drive home. He ended up wrapping the car around a tree. Thankfully, no one else was hurt, but it was a miracle he walked away with only minor injuries. The next morning, the police showed up at our house. I watched as Mom talked her way out of it, promising to handle it. She hired a lawyer to reduce Michael's charges and told me to stay out of it when I asked how she could afford it. Later, I found out she'd taken out a loan to cover the legal fees. It was beyond frustrating. Michael wasn't even apologetic. He acted like it wasn't a big deal, and Mom let him get away with it. A few months later, Michael got another DUI. This time, Mom refinanced the house to pay for a better lawyer. I remember overhearing her on the phone, begging the bank for an extension. It broke my heart. She was willing to risk everything for Michael, even if it meant putting herself in financial ruin. When I suggested Michael take the bus to get around, she snapped at me, saying it wasn't safe for him. "Family helps family," she told me, like I was the one being unreasonable. By this point, I'd stopped trying to reason with her. It didn't matter what Michael did. She'd always find a way to excuse it. So I focused on myself. I worked hard in school, took on more hours at my part-time job, and saved every penny I could. My dream was to go to college, get a degree, and eventually move far away from the chaos of my family. Working at the bakery became my escape. My boss, Mrs. Chun, was like a breath of fresh air. She treated me with respect and kindness, which was something I wasn't used to at home. She taught me everything she knew about baking and even encouraged me to start thinking about opening my own bakery someday. It felt good to have someone believe in me. Mom, of course, was too busy with Michael to notice any of this. She missed my high school graduation because Michael had some minor stomachache and needed her. She didn't even bother to apologize. I sat there in my cap and gown, surrounded by my classmates and their families, feeling completely alone. Mrs. Chun came, though. She brought flowers and even took me out for ice cream afterward. It wasn't the same as having my mom there, but it meant the world to me. Michael, meanwhile, kept spiraling. He couldn't keep a job for more than a few weeks, and was constantly borrowing money from Mom. She'd complain about it to me sometimes, saying how hard it was to keep up with his demands. But the second I suggested cutting him off, she'd shut me down. "You don't understand," she'd say. "He's struggling. He needs our help." It wasn't just money either. Michael had Mom running herself ragged. She'd drive him everywhere since he'd lost his license. She even quit her job because it interfered with Michael's schedule. I remember asking her how she planned to pay the bills, and she just shrugged, saying, "We'll figure it out." It was maddening. She was so deep in denial that she couldn't see how much damage she was doing, to herself and to me. I tried to talk to Michael once, hoping to get through to him. I told him he needed to take responsibility for his life, that he couldn't keep leaning on Mom forever. He laughed in my face. "What do you care?" he said. "Mom doesn't mind. Besides, it's not like you're doing anything important." His words stung, but they weren't surprising. Michael had always been selfish, and Mom had always enabled it. The breaking point came when I started applying for college. I'd worked so hard to save up money and earn scholarships, and I was finally ready to take the next step. I sat Mom down to talk about my plans, hoping she'd be proud of me. Instead, she barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice, honey," she said. "But Michael has an interview tomorrow and he needs me to help him prepare." That was the last straw. I realized then that I couldn't rely on Mom for anything. Not support, not encouragement, not even basic acknowledgement. I ended up getting into a great school, and I worked my butt off to make it through. Between classes, part-time jobs, and the occasional freelance gig, I managed to pay for everything myself. Mom didn't come to my college graduation either. She said she couldn't leave Michael because he had a job interview. Mrs. Chun came, though. She even gave me a small gift, a custom apron with my name embroidered on it. It was one of the nicest things anyone had ever done for me. Through it all, I kept hoping Mom would wake up and see what Michael was doing to her. He wasn't just taking her money, he was taking her time, her energy, her entire life. But she didn't see it that way. To her, Michael was still the little boy who needed her protection, and I was the strong one who didn't need anything. Looking back, I think that's what hurt the most. It wasn't just that Mom favored Michael, it was that she didn't see me at all. I wasn't her daughter. I was her backup plan, the person she turned to when Michael wasn't around. It was a lonely way to grow up, but it taught me how to take care of myself. And for that, I'm grateful. After college, I started to feel like things were finally falling into place. I landed a decent job, got my own apartment, and began saving for my ultimate dream, opening a bakery. It wasn't easy, but I was proud of what I'd accomplished. I didn't expect much from Mom or Michael at this point. I'd already accepted that they wouldn't celebrate my wins or support me. Still, I never expected what came next. When Grandma passed away, it was devastating. She had always been my rock, the one person in my family who genuinely cared about me. Losing her felt like losing the last bit of stability I had, but even in her passing, Grandma found a way to support me. She left me $50,000 in her will, specifically for my bakery dream. It was bittersweet, but it gave me hope. Finally, I could start working towards something that was truly mine. For the first few months after Grandma's death, I focused on planning. I worked with Mrs. Chun to finalize a business plan, researched locations, and even looked into potential suppliers. But as time passed, I realized the money hadn't been transferred to my account. At first, I thought it was just a delay in the estate process. I called the lawyer handling Grandma's will to check on the status, and that's when everything unraveled. The lawyer told me the money had already been claimed. Mom had collected it, saying she was managing it on my behalf. My heart sank. I knew something was wrong. Mom hadn't mentioned anything about the money, and knowing her history with Michael, I had a sinking feeling about where it had gone. That evening, I went to Mom's house to confront her. She looked surprised to see me and immediately started acting cagey when I brought up the inheritance. "Oh, I was going to tell you," she said, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "I've just been so busy with Michael. You know how it is." I didn't let her dodge the question. "Where's the money, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She avoided my eyes and mumbled something about using some of it. When I pressed her, she finally broke down, sobbing and confessing that she'd given $45,000 of my inheritance to Michael. I was stunned. My head was spinning as she tried to explain. "Michael needed it," she said, as if that justified everything. "He's trying to get his license back and start a trucking business. It's a great opportunity for him. You'll understand when you're older." "Mom, that money wasn't for Michael," I said, my voice rising. "It was for my bakery. Grandma left it to me for a reason." She didn't seem to care. She waved her hand dismissively and said, "You can start small with the $5,000 that's left. Many businesses start that way. You'll figure it out. You're smart." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Years of frustration and hurt bubbled to the surface. "You had no right to touch that money," I said. "Grandma trusted me with it, not you. Do you even realize what you've done?" Her response was to cry harder, calling me cruel for bringing up Grandma's warnings about enabling Michael. "You're just jealous," she said between sobs. "Michael's had a harder life than you. You don't know what it's like to struggle like he does." Before I could say anything else, Michael walked in. He had the nerve to act like I was the problem. "Why are you yelling at Mom?" he sneered. "She's been through enough." When I told him the money wasn't his to take, he laughed. "Oh, come on," he said. "Grandma always favored you. I think it's fair that I get something for once." That was it. I was done. I told them both I was cutting them out of my life. "Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't show up at my apartment. I'm done." Mom started wailing, saying I was breaking her heart, but I didn't care. Michael smirked, like he thought I'd come crawling back eventually. When I got home, I blocked their numbers and deleted them from my social media. I knew it wouldn't stop them, but it was a start. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. But, of course, they didn't respect my boundaries. Within days, they were showing up at my workplace. It started with Mom sitting in the parking lot during my lunch breaks, crying and begging me to talk to her. Then Michael joined in, yelling about how selfish I was for abandoning the family. My coworkers started to notice, and it became a running joke in the office. People would say, "Your family's here again," like it was some kind of sitcom. It was humiliating. Things escalated when Michael tried to follow me into the office one morning. He was yelling so loudly that security had to step in. They banned him and Mom from the property, but it didn't stop them. Mom started emailing me from different accounts, pleading for me to reconsider. She even emailed my boss, causing trouble with HR. I was mortified. Then came the Facebook posts. My Uncle Mike posted a long rant about how I was tearing the family apart. He included old family photos and accused me of being a heartless daughter who turned her back on her mother. My cousins chimed in, calling me selfish and ungrateful. None of them seemed to care about what Mom and Michael had done. None of them offered to replace the money. They just wanted me to forgive and forget, like always. I tried to ignore it, but it was hard. Everywhere I turned, someone was trying to guilt me into reconciling with Mom and Michael. It felt like I was drowning in their expectations. Cutting off contact with Mom and Michael wasn't as simple as I had hoped. I thought blocking their numbers and staying away would be enough, but they made it their mission to drag me back into their mess. It didn't take long for things to escalate, and before I knew it, their attempts to reconnect had spilled over into my personal and professional life. At first, it was just Mom showing up at my workplace, sitting in the parking lot during my lunch breaks. She'd cry in her car, hoping I'd come out to talk to her. I ignored her. Then Michael started tagging along, standing by my car in the mornings, yelling about how selfish I was for abandoning the family. I'd walk straight past him, pretending not to hear, but my coworkers noticed. One day, my supervisor pulled me aside. "Is everything okay at home?" she asked, clearly uncomfortable. "We've noticed, well, your family seems to be here a lot." It was humiliating. I mumbled something about a family disagreement and promised it wouldn't interfere with work. But the truth was, it already had. People were gossiping about my dramatic family, and I felt like I couldn't escape it. The final straw came when Michael tried to follow me into the office. He was yelling so loudly that people on the second floor could hear him. Security had to step in, escorting him out while Mom stood outside, sobbing and telling anyone who would listen that I was breaking her heart. After that, security banned both of them from the property. I thought that would be the end of it, but Mom found another way to insert herself into my life. She started emailing me from different accounts, pleading with me to reconsider. When that didn't work, she emailed my boss, telling them I was in a fragile emotional state and asking for understanding. HR got involved, warning me that if the emails didn't stop, it could jeopardize my job. I was mortified, but Mom wasn't the only one trying to guilt me into forgiving them. My Uncle Mike decided to make it a public spectacle. He posted a long rant on Facebook, complete with old family photos, accusing me of being a heartless daughter and tearing the family apart. My cousins chimed in, calling me selfish and ungrateful. It felt like an ambush. None of them seemed to care about what Mom and Michael had done. They just wanted me to keep the peace, even if it meant sacrificing my happiness. Despite all this, I refused to back down. I knew I was in the right, even if no one else seemed to think so. Then, one weekend, I ran into Michael's ex, Olivia, at the grocery store. We hadn't spoken in years, but she recognized me right away. After some small talk, she brought up Michael, asking if he was still causing trouble. I told her about the inheritance and his supposed trucking business, and she burst out laughing. "Trucking business?" she said, shaking her head. "Michael doesn't have any plans for a business. He's been gambling for over a year. He's in deep, like $40,000 in debt." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Mom said he needed the money to get his license back and start the business." Olivia pulled out her phone, scrolling through old messages. "You need to see this," she said, showing me texts from Michael. In the messages, he bragged about convincing Mom to give him the inheritance. He called me stupid for believing the trucking story and laughed about how easy it was to get Mom to hand over the money. Reading those texts felt like a punch to the gut. He mocked me, mocked Grandma, and even joked about how Mom would always pick him over me. One message stood out. "She's so dumb. Grandma should have just left it all to me." Olivia kept scrolling, showing me more proof. Michael had borrowed money from dozens of people, spinning different sob stories to each one. He'd told our elderly neighbor, Mr. Wilson, that he needed $5,000 for medical bills. He convinced a family friend to give him $3,000 for a car repair business. Every penny he got went straight to gambling. Armed with this evidence, I went to Mom's house that evening. She tried to play dumb at first, saying Olivia was just bitter and out to get Michael. But when I showed her the messages, she finally admitted the truth. She said the loan sharks had been threatening Michael and that she felt she had no choice but to help him. "You had no right to touch that money," I yelled, my voice shaking. "Grandma left it for me. She trusted me with it." Mom's response was infuriating. "I couldn't let them hurt Michael," she said, as if that justified everything. "I couldn't risk losing the house. You're young. You can save up again." "Why didn't you sell your house then?" I shot back. "Why not take out a loan? Why does Michael's mess always fall on me?" She didn't have an answer. Instead, she deflected, saying I was being selfish and ungrateful. "I did what any mother would do," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You'll understand when you have kids of your own." But I didn't buy it. Mom had made her choice. And it wasn't me. It was never me. The next day, I got a call from Grandma's lawyer. He'd been reviewing the estate paperwork and discovered that Mom had forged my signature on several documents to access the inheritance. He said he was legally obligated to report the forgery and asked if I wanted to press charges. I felt sick. Pressing charges against my own mother? It felt unthinkable. But at the same time, I couldn't just let her get away with it. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself after years of being sidelined and mistreated. I told the lawyer to move forward. When Mom found out, she called me, frantic and tearful. She begged me not to press charges, saying she'd only done it to protect Michael. "He said he'd leave if I didn't help him," she sobbed. "He threatened to move across the country and cut me off." It was always the same story with her. Michael's needs came first, no matter the cost. But this time, I wasn't backing down. For once, I was standing my ground. The fallout from pressing charges against Mom was worse than I had imagined. The news spread quickly through the family, and almost everyone on Mom's side turned against me. My Uncle Mike led the charge, blasting me on Facebook and calling me a disgraceful daughter. He claimed I was destroying my family over money, and even accused me of trying to make Mom homeless. His post went viral within our small community, and suddenly, distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years were chiming in with their opinions. "Blood is thicker than water," one of my cousins wrote. "How could you do this to your own mother?" "She's always been ungrateful," another added. "A real daughter would forgive her mom." I tried not to let it get to me, but it wasn't easy. These people had no idea what I'd been through, and they didn't care to understand. None of them offered to help replace the money Mom had stolen, and none of them held Michael accountable for his actions. They just wanted me to sweep it all under the rug and pretend everything was fine. Dad's side of the family, however, stood by me. They knew the kind of person Michael was and how much damage Mom's favoritism had caused over the years. My aunt called to check on me almost daily, and a few relatives even pooled together a small fund to help me save for my bakery again. It wasn't much, but their support meant the world to me. Meanwhile, Michael was in trouble. Olivia had filed a report about his gambling debts and the money he'd scammed from her, and the police were investigating him for fraud. It turned out he'd been running fake business schemes for years, targeting people who trusted him. The scale of his deception was staggering. Over $120,000 stolen from friends, neighbors, and even members of our church. One of his victims was Mr. Thompson, our elderly neighbor. Michael had taken $5,000 from him, claiming he needed surgery. Another was a retired couple from church, the Adams, who gave Michael $25,000 after he convinced them he had government contracts to renovate low-income housing. He even scammed his old high school teacher, Ms. Thompson, out of $15,000 for a fake food truck business. Mom had helped him cover up some of these scams, paying off victims and writing apology letters to keep them quiet. When the police arrested Michael, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. He had hurt so many people, but part of me still remembered the brother I grew up with, the one I used to look up to before Mom's favoritism poisoned everything. Michael had always been selfish, but Mom's constant enabling had turned him into a monster. Mom's case came next. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Handwriting experts confirmed she'd forged my signature to access the inheritance, and the bank records didn't lie. Her lawyer reached out to me, offering to settle by selling her house and repaying me in small installments. But I refused. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself and holding her accountable for years of neglect and betrayal. The trial was painful to sit through. Mom looked frail and exhausted as she took the stand, and her lawyer painted her as a desperate mother who had acted out of love for her son. But the evidence spoke louder than her tears. Even when the judge handed down her sentence, Mom refused to take responsibility. She looked at me with pleading eyes, as if expecting me to forgive her one last time. I didn't. After the trial, I packed up my life and moved to a new city. I found a small apartment, got a job at an accounting firm, and started rebuilding. I didn't tell anyone in my family where I went, determined to protect myself from further interference. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But the peace didn't last long. Mom began calling me from different numbers, begging me to write a letter to the judge asking for leniency for Michael. She insisted he didn't deserve jail time, that he'd learned his lesson. Even some members of our old church reached out, saying Mom only acted out of love and that I should forgive her. I ignored them all. I had spent my entire life putting their needs above my own, and I wasn't going to do it anymore. Michael's trial came first. The courtroom was packed with people he had scammed, each one sharing how his lies had affected their lives. Some cried, expressing guilt for trusting him, while others spoke with anger about the financial and emotional toll he had caused. For the first time, Michael couldn't charm his way out of trouble. He avoided looking at me the entire time, but I didn't care. When the judge handed him a prison sentence, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. He was finally facing the consequences of his actions. Mom's case followed soon after. She looked like a shadow of the woman who had once held our family together, however imperfectly. Her lawyer tried to garner sympathy, but the evidence was irrefutable. In her closing statement, she tried to appeal to me directly, saying she had only done what any mother would do to protect her child. But I saw through it. Her actions weren't about love. They were about control. The judge sentenced her to probation and community service, and while it wasn't the closure I wanted, it was enough. In the months that followed, I found myself feeling lighter, freer. Without the constant weight of Mom and Michael's drama, I was finally able to focus on myself. I stayed connected with Dad's side of the family, whose quiet support had been a lifeline. They encouraged me to keep pursuing my bakery dream, reminding me that I deserved happiness. Life in my new city has been peaceful. I've made new friends, built a routine, and started saving for my bakery again.